everyone. I'm your host, Anika Zubair, and welcome back to the next episode of the Customer Success Pro podcast. I'm a customer success executive leader, award-winning CS strategist, CS coach, and customer success fanatic. I help CS leaders and CSMs build and scale world-class CS processes and teams. I'm a strong believer that customer success is not a destination, but a journey. And it can be a tough journey, but don't worry, I'm here to help. This podcast was created to help make your CS journey a little bit easier to navigate. Join me every month on this podcast where we will dive into the hottest topics in CS, the newest strategies, and the best practices in customer success so you can make your CS journey a little bit easier. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast so that you can continue to learn on this CS journey that we are on together. Welcome back. Today, I'm speaking with none other than Daphne Costa Lopes, who is the Director of Customer Success at HubSpot. Over the last decade, she has helped startups, scale-ups, and Fortune 500 businesses build and scale global customer success teams to service 200,000 plus customers and over $2 billion in revenue. She has invested her energy into building and scaling customer success teams to be the second growth engine for tech businesses. And today we will talk to Daphne all about how to drive and grow retention at scale. She has created concepts like CSQLs for her customers, and by focusing on customer-led growth, she has helped the businesses that she's worked with achieve over 130% net revenue retention. Let's chat to Daphne all about her tips and tricks on growing revenue with your customers at scale. Welcome, Daphne, to the podcast. I am so very excited to have you on my podcast. I have been a longtime listener of your podcast and following all your content online, but I'm truly honored to have you here on my podcast today. But before we dive into today's topic, it would be really great to know who you are in your own words. And for maybe the few listeners that I have that don't know who you are, what is it that you do?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I'm also a big fan of yours and right back at you with listening to the podcast. I think you are one of the most prominent leaders in CS in Europe. So it's awesome to have another strong female in the EU working customer success. And for those who don't know me, my name is Daphne Costa Lopes. I am the Director of Customer Success at HubSpot. I also host a podcast called This is Growth that currently goes on a monthly basis to all the listeners. I have a weekly newsletter that goes out every Friday to over 10,000 CS professionals. And I've been in CS over a decade. I've worked in scale-ups, I've worked in startups, I've worked in Fortune 500 companies. So I've seen CS done in every part of the life cycle of a company maturity. And really, I think for me, the evolution of CS has just been so exciting over the last 12, 14 years, seeing how we've come a long way. We've become a revenue generating department. We're now a cornerstone of how you grow a business. So excited about the future of CS and obviously to talk to you today and unpack some of those topics.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. You have been at HubSpot for quite some time now, or it's been a few promotions, and I love watching your career trajectory personally as well. And again, all the content you put out there about customer success and how to grow and scale a team. Tell us a little bit more about that team and what you have grown at HubSpot specifically.
Yeah. So I'm coming up to 5 years at HubSpot, which kind of seems crazy, to be in a company for this long. But I have to say that every single year in HubSpot has been basically a completely different year and with different challenges. When I joined HubSpot, we were at the 90,000 customer mark, 90. And now we're over 240,000 customers. Every single thing that we used to do 5 years ago had to be rebuilt. We have to build a new team, new roles, new processes, new playbooks, new technology. And for that reason, every single year has been challenging in a different way. I've continued to learn and I've continued to just develop my understanding of what great customer success looks like and the possibilities for customer success at a scale like HubSpot. So I think that's what keeps me in HubSpot for so long. Also the culture, the people, but I'll leave that out for a different conversation. I've had multiple jobs at HubSpot, and if I can kind of rewind in time, when I decided to join HubSpot, I took a step back in my career. So I was head of customer success for a company that was acquired by Lufthansa. I had solutions architect, I had implementations, I have customer success, I had customer support. So I had multiple different departments. I was leading leaders, and I decided to come to HubSpot to be one of the first managers in their EMEA team. When I joined, there was no segmentation. There was very little maturity in the CS organization, even though it was 90,000 customers. It was nascent at HubSpot. And I made a bet. I made a bet that joining HubSpot as an exciting company that I believed in the mission, I believed in the leadership team, that taking that step back, and by the way, it was not just a title step back, but it was a salary step back as well for me at that time. So it was a real bet. I was betting in the future of the company and my future within the company. And the bet has paid off. It has paid off big time. I was able to accelerate my career at HubSpot because I had all that experience in the past. As the organization matured, and I matured with it, but I also brought a lot of experience, and meant that I was ready quick for those leadership positions. So I've gone from a manager leading an individual team to leading multiple regions, and then becoming a principal manager, which in HubSpot terms means a leader of leaders, and then becoming a director most recently. So it's been a journey, but I've been able to accelerate that journey because I took that step back and I was able to then accelerate back forward in the right place.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing like the raw authenticity of that, because I think a lot of people consider career growth or career trajectory a linear path to growth, meaning when you move companies, you're going to take, either a step up, whether it's a title or a salary, but you were very open and honest that you took a bet on a company, on a mission, on a value, and it's paid off, which is really great. I think a lot of people who look for new roles are always weighing the pros and cons of, hey, should I take this bet? And should I either, jump into a smaller company, a smaller org? Like you said, you were a manager of managers. You were looking at a very different team structure, and you took that step back to now move forward, which is really great to hear. I've personally done something similar as well. So it's nice to hear that there is no straightforward path in customer success, but just in career in general. So I really love hearing that. And you've grown your company size, like the actual customer base has grown tremendously, which is wild. I mean, HubSpot's a big name now as well, but even when you joined, that was still a very large number of customers to have. And then now having over 200,000 customers, and I think it's 2 billion in revenue that you guys are holding as well. That's a massive number. Can you give me a breakdown of like the types of customers you're dealing with? Are they SMB, enterprise? What's the mix? Like that's a huge, huge base that you're working with there.
Yeah. HubSpot has made a bet on a bimodal strategy where we work with the bottom of the market, but we also work with the top of the market. And that comes with all sorts of different challenges, right? When you're serving the smallest of smallest companies, in HubSpot's case, we have an entire free CRM where you have people who are one-person businesses, they are side projects, they are hustles, you have that kind of profile. But then you have some of the biggest companies in the world using HubSpot. So we have everything. We have everything from the smallest player to the biggest player, which means that we have very different models for customer success. We have like our tech touch, we have our scale CS, we have our up-market motions, and then we have our large enterprise strategic accounts motion. So we do customer success in every angle of every process that you might see. Digital CS is a big thing for us. We invest heavily on that. So we do a little bit of everything basically in that. But a lot of our customers will be medium-sized businesses. When you think about like that 200 to 2,000 employees, and that's who we're building for. That's who we are focused on. But like I said, like we have a little bit of everything, which makes making success a challenge.
Definitely. I was just about to say success at that level of growth, scale, retention for that wide of a customer base, how you're applying your either growth strategies, retention, all the different CS strategies that we know and practice every single day. That must be so difficult because not only do you have hundreds of thousands of customers, you also have so many different segments and so many different territories. And like you said, a product for a solopreneur all the way to a major Fortune 500 company using you. That's a very different use case and a very different level of skills you need to really be able to see that customer through the entire customer journey. And I know we're going to get into this topic a little bit more, and I know you're super passionate about it, but let's talk a little bit more about you and then we'll go into the topic. I'm super curious, why customer success for you? What made you take the leap of faith working specifically in the post-sales functions that you've been in?
Yeah. So if I rewind back in time to college, I graduated with a chemistry degree, and I don't work in chemistry today.
Obviously, I love everyone's different degrees. I had a political science degree, and I don't work in political science today. So I love how unique the customer success field is. We all come from so many different wakes of life, and it's awesome to see where we started, what we studied, and what we're doing today. So chemistry, that's so cool. Why chemistry to customer success?
Yeah, so the journey was really interesting. When I was studying chemistry, my final semester, I had to do an internship. And in that internship, I had to work in a lab. And I was lucky to get a job in a really prestigious lab. But what didn't work out for me was the fact that I was in, it was a high contagion space. So you worked, think about Breaking Bad, the suit, the white suit. Yeah, too. Exactly. That was the environment. And the lab I worked in, I worked solo, which meant that I was on my own all day. And I think this was like not a good environment for me because if you know me, I'm social, I like talking, I like interacting, I like collaboration. So when I finished that internship, I was a little bit underwhelmed with chemistry. I was like, I thought I was going to be doing one sort of work. Turns out that the work is very different. And then I had a little bit of an identity crisis. I was like, okay, is this for me? Did I just spend the last 4 years studying something I don't like? And I decided to go traveling. And in my travels, I came to Europe. I'm originally from Brazil, so I came to Europe. And what happened then was I needed to find a job. I had ambitions to stay in Europe, but didn't have the money to just sit and do nothing. So I had to work. And
wow, what a pity. I wish we could all just sit and do nothing in Europe, but we do have to work.
well, yeah, that would be, I did, yeah, my first option would have been sunbathing in Cannes, but because that wasn't an option, I needed to find work. And I was looking for transferable skills. I knew I didn't want to work on a lab again. That was definitely something that I learned from that experience with my internship. So I was looking for transferable skills. What is it that I can do that I learned in my degree that will be valuable for companies, that will get me a job, but that I don't have to work in a lab? That was the thinking. So I landed a role that was on the business analytics space. It was a very junior role, working with a fashion company, doing basically their forecasting for buying. So deciding what they're going to buy, where they're going to send it to. So on the merchandising space. So that's kind of like my entry to the professional world, let's say. And in that job, first of all, I really enjoyed that job. I liked it. But one of the things that I observed very, very early when I came into that role was how much of the work was repetitive. So I was running the same things every single day, every single week, every single month. And people around me seemed to be happy doing that. And I wasn't happy doing that. I was like, why are we doing this manually every single week, every single month? Like, can't this not be done in a smarter way? So that's when I started looking at technology options. to help us achieve our goals in a way that was better, faster, more automated. So it gave us space to do different work. I didn't know at the time what that different work would be, but I just knew that I didn't want to do the same pointless task every single day, every single week. So I started working and kind of building some automation on Excel or bringing some little tools into the process. Started working with our IT team to figure out ways to connect systems that weren't connected. And we were trying to copy and paste data in Excel to analyze the data instead of actually using the systems. All the kind of like, let's say, back office operations type of stuff. And it was during that time that, because I was now freeing up my own time, I was able to get involved with special projects in the company. And I was put into so many different things. They were so varied, from visiting different stores to auditing in finances to doing factory reviews. Like, I did so many different projects that were really exciting because I got to learn new things. I also got to learn what I didn't want to do, which was as valuable.
That's super valuable to have, especially early on in your career, I would say, is like be really crystal clear about what you're great at. But it's also good to understand what you do not want to spend your energy on, because wasting your energy is just not the right place for anyone in any point of your career. It's great that you were able to discover that early on.
Yeah. And I was able to also work with a lot of different people and learn like the kinds of environments, the kind of people that I admired, the behaviors, the skills that I thought was worth developing. And one of the things that I really enjoyed were the projects with technology. Anytime I had to work with the implementation of a new system or enabling users, like I just really enjoyed that. But one of the things I learned from those projects was how hard it was to get people to adopt products. It was really, really hard. The business would invest thousands, hundreds of thousands sometimes in products. And we would do all the technical implementation, which you think would be the hardest part of the project, especially on a legacy type environment where you have a lot of legacy products. But no, the technology piece was actually the easy part. It was very logical and straightforward. The hard part was getting people to use products. And because I was so interested in this type of project, I started studying and learning a lot. At this point, I went back to college and did a business degree. I was learning about change management, and I kind of fell in love with change management. And at that same time, I was graduating and I decided I wanted to do that full time. I wanted to work with technology implementations full time. And I met the co-founders of a really, really early stage startup, and I joined them. The business was basically what today I call customer success as a service. At the time, we were just partners to technology companies. We basically acted as their onboarding and customer success teams, especially companies that were like early Series A and B. So they were companies that had enough customers to have interest in customer success, but that wasn't their priority. Their priority was acquisition. So we came in and we worked with their customers. And it was through those projects. And again, at the time, we didn't used to call this customer success. We just used to call implementation and customer management. But it was in this project, in this role, that I then realized, one, how much I loved this work, but secondly, how much value this work could create for a technology company. Because at the time, we didn't have success qualified leads. Now that's a really common concept, like success finding opportunities and sending it to the sales team. But at the time, again, there was no mechanism to do that. There was no even language to talk about this. But I realized that during onboarding and during those engagements, those ongoing engagements, that we uncovered a bunch of new needs that the customer had, that we uncovered new departments, new regions. And that was a really quick and easy way of finding sales opportunities. So I started tracking like how many of those sales opportunities we were sending back to the technology company, how many of them were closing. And I had this eureka moment. I think it was 2011. And it was like, oh my God, like the value of customer success is the fact that customers will come in on that land and expand strategy, and you'll be able to expand. You realize that expansion.
Yeah.
So it was that eureka moment that then made me go all in customer
Yeah.
because I saw the two-sided value to it. It wasn't just value for the customer. We weren't just doing this from the goodness of our hearts because we wanted people to succeed. We're actually doing it because it was good for business. So those two things combined put me on a path to build an entire career in customer success.
I love that. There's probably a lot of pieces from your early part of your career, like you said, from being a business analyst at a fashion company to now that you probably take away. And like you just said, you had repeatable processes, you were building processes, you were using a lot of your skills that transferred from a job that was in customer success into a title and a job that at the time was in customer success, but sounded very much like it. And now you're building and scaling customer success at a major organization where you're having to take probably a lot of those skills and a lot of those tactics that you learned and established at previous roles and applying it today, but in a different scale, a different way. And I'm sure there's many things that you've done to really drive customer retention and customer growth at scale, which is what we really want to dive into today. But I think if I'm thinking about everyone that's listening to this podcast, there's a huge pressure on renewals. If I think about retention and growth within customer success, it's probably very focused in the renewal space. And CSMs, for the most part, are probably heavily reliant on renewals and upsells as well, but we'll get into that later. But how did you specifically start with renewals? With so many customers, with such a vast customer base, where did you actually start to scale when it came to renewals and making sure renewals were coming in a systematic, automated approach that you love?
Yeah. So the first thing actually is at the scale that we operate in HubSpot, we actually created a renewals team. So a team that was completely focused and responsible for the successful renewal with the customer. Then when I say successful renewal, obviously a customer needs to arrive to the renewal window having seen success and value to have a successful renewal.
Yeah. So how are you doing that? Where are you doing that? Is that in the app? How are you making sure they see success, especially in a digital way? Like, how are you continuing to prove that in a digital way?
Yeah, this is like a really big challenge. And what we do in HubSpot is we try to build as much of the value proof in product. So for example, if you're a user of our HubSpot marketing tool, one of your main use cases for HubSpot is generating demand leads. And a lot of people do that through capture on their website, creation of newsletters, content that will convert people into your CRM that you can then use to market and sell to. So we are capturing those value points, like how many emails you're sending, what's the open rate of those emails, what is the click-through and conversion to revenue of those. And instead of like waiting for you to build a report yourself on this stuff or waiting for you to ask for that information, we're actually making that part of the UI of the product. When you go into your HubSpot marketing tool, the first thing you see is a dashboard with all that information that's already there for you. So every single time you log into the product, you're seeing the value you're getting from it.
That's amazing. So are you doing like success plans and QBRs right then and there as well? Like, how are you managing not only to show the value, but reminding the customer all the time that this is the value you're getting from the product? Because when you log in, sure, you get prompts and notifications telling you things, but what about like the bigger plan here with QBRs and success plans and just some of the tactics that we do every day as a CSM?
Yeah. So going back to that segmentation that I was talking at the start, how many segments you have from the smallest to the largest, we obviously don't do account planning or growth plans or success plans for every account. Or we also don't do enterprise business reviews for every account. However, as we go up the segmentation strategy, so as you start talking to customers who are larger, are spending more money with HubSpot, we are then increasing the touch. You still at the tech touch level get a summary of the value that you get, and you get inside the product recommendations to do better. So for example, when you have enough emails that you send through HubSpot, you have an AI that builds a set of recommendations for how you can do better. So we benchmark your results against the results of users like you. We show how you're benchmarked and we say, hey, here's ideas for things that you should try to improve your performance. And that's like, if you think about it, it's kind of what you do at the highest touch with the CSM, right? You're showing customers their performance, you're benchmarking them, you're talking about strategies to do better. So we bake that into the product for every customer, but that's kind of all that the tech touch customers get. But as you go up the segmentation strategy, we actually start adding more to that communication of value. So in the highest touch, where you have a dedicated CSM with a very small book of business because they are in a strategic account for HubSpot, they're having multiple touch points with us, having conversations with the CSM, and our enterprise business reviews will happen at least once a quarter. And they would require a certain attendance from the customer's stakeholders. So, for example, it's not an enterprise business review if the decision maker hasn't attended that conversation. Because who needs to understand the value in order to continue to work with HubSpot or to increase how much work we do together is the decision maker. So we, at the highest level, we're doing that enterprise business review every 3 months. But then as you come down the segmentation strategy, so you have like the two bookends, right? The complete tech touch, and then the highest level is quarterly reviews. But then in the middle, we're still doing those conversations. So if you are a CSM, you're still a dedicated CSM, but you have a larger number of accounts, we say that you should do a value review at least every 6 months. So like middle point of the contract, you should do that. And at the small business segment, what we're doing is as the customer enters the renewal window, we're sending them their value summary. So they might not actually be having a meeting about it, but they're getting the information summarized to them. And all of those assets that we use in conversations, both the user summary, the value summary, and the QBR deck, those resources are completely automated. They get populated for the CSM, which means that we can have those conversations more often, right? And at a lower effort rate, because a lot of the work usually goes into creating the deck and pulling out the information and pulling out the data points versus actually planning the delivery and actually delivering it. So we've been able to automate the assets to ensure that those conversations can happen in multiple segments, not just for the highest paying customers.
Definitely. And that all sounds really good in theory, and I love it. I'm sure there was a lot of work behind everything you were just talking about, but I'm so curious, especially at that digital end, that scale end, the one where you're absolutely tech or maybe very minimal customer success touch. How are you actually getting your customers prompted in to enter in whether their goals are, what their objectives are? Like, how are you actually encouraging that? Because I can imagine if there's not a CSM driving a conversation or trying to ask the right compelling question, it's easy to just X a box out or move on or say, actually, I don't have time for this as a customer and I'm just going to start using different parts of the tool. Or are you auto creating some of this for the customer? How are you making sure that value realization piece that you're talking about is created so then eventually those value realization conversations are no brainers? But I'm just thinking in the early days of capturing goals in a digital or scale way, that could be really tricky and tough.
Yes. And I am a massive fan of actually being opinionated about this as an organization. It's not about asking the customer individually for every single customer, what is your goal? But it's about you as a company knowing what problems you solve and being able to connect that back to the metrics inside your product and being able to surface that. I was just talking about the marketing use case for HubSpot, right? One of the goals is to generate demand. We know that marketing qualified leads is the goal. As a customer, you could be doing many things. You could be running events. You could be in a trade show. You could be sending emails. There are so many ways that you can generate leads, but the value at the end is the same. You generated a lead, right? We're opinionated on what the value you get from the product is because we understand who we're building for. And I think that is, first of all, the bedrock of being able to scale value communication and value measure. Because if you're not opinionated on what it is that your product does, what problems do you solve, for whom, and how you measure it. If you don't know the answer to those three things, every value conversation will be individual, unique, etc. And I'm not saying that you can't have unique goals. Of course, like when we talk to our enterprise customers, they don't just want to generate leads. They have other goals as well with our product, like improving productivity, visibility, like things that are slightly harder to measure. But in the scale side, like having those 2 or 3 use cases that you understand deeply and understanding the industry metrics for those is actually, for me, the only way you can scale that. Yes, you can collect in product. Like you said, when you, in B2C, you see that a lot. Like you download MyFitnessPal and the first thing that they ask you is like, what's your goal with this app? Like, do you want to lose weight? Do you want to gain muscle? Do you want, so you as a user, you're not allowed to skip that. You have to answer now. Whether you're answering if you're doing deep thinking to answer this stuff or not, it's obviously a different thing. So I think there are ways to collect that. Like you have 5 use cases, ask your user to pick one of the 5, right? And you can start refining by that. I think collecting persona data is also really interesting. So like in HubSpot, if you're using our sales product, you could be a sales director or you could be a sales rep. Do they have the same goal with the product? No. They want to do different things. They need different enablement. They need different content. So we need to be able to tailor the journey of those 2 very different users. So collecting persona data becomes very important. Like what is somebody's job role? What are they interested in? And making sure that you're prompting maybe every 6 months, every 12 months, so that you know that person is still doing that job, because people evolve. If you collect that once and you don't go back to it, that data is outdated very, very quickly. So I think that there's those ways of scaling, building in product, but also being opinionated about what problems you solve for whom is really, really important.
I love that, because you guys are being both prescriptive about what it is you guys do, and you are truly being consultative as well. I think a lot of times it's forgotten in customer success, where it's just like, hi, how can I help? It almost becomes in that service mindset of like, let me help you, or please guide me to what your problem is. But you are also outlining a problem set. You're saying, if you're coming to HubSpot, it's usually one of 5 reasons you're here today. Based on these 5 reasons, let's dive in deeper to the goals, specifics, what you're trying to do, whether it's marketing, whether it's, lead collection, whether it's a CRM, a full end suite, whatever it is. You are both guiding and giving space for your customer to really guide you as well. So it's a 2-way conversation, which I think is really critical in customer success. And sometimes we really forget that. We tend to either be directed by our customers, or we try to over direct them and then they fail or they don't succeed because we got it wrong. So it's really a balancing act by the sounds of it to really make sure you scale in a meaningful way with your customer, is both listening to what they have to say, but using your business analyst bits and really analyzing what they're going to do within your product and giving them guidance as well. So I really love that. And you mentioned something around CSQLs, and I know that they're super popular right now. And I'm curious, how are you guys doing that at scale as well? Because usually CSQLs come from conversations and a customer success manager really uncovering opportunity within an account and having those meaningful conversations with customers. But I'm wondering how you're doing that at scale. How are you capturing leads based on a digital or tech touch approach?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And for those who are doing PLG, they'll be familiar with PQL as a concept, so a product qualified lead. Or if you have a trial freemium type model, that concept is also quite common in those spaces. And that is how we do it. We have signals in the product that show that based on your usage, based on your consumption, based on the number of people that you have in the product, that you are ready for the next thing. So it's a machine learning model that will look at those data points and then make a decision on whether you're ready for a next product or not. And that is how we would do that. And that information then goes to the sales team straight into their leads dashboard. They will pick those leads up and they will go and have those conversations with the customer. Usually there is a sales rep involved in that conversation. At least in HubSpot's case, we don't do much. Once the customer is already paying us at a starter package, We don't do a lot of online sales. You can't like necessarily buy the enterprise feature in product. You have to have a conversation with somebody. So those PQLs go to the sales team. The sales team will close them. And oftentimes what happens is a customer that's upgrading, they're moving segments with HubSpot. So they used to be like a fully tech touch customer. They've upgraded. Now they are on our scale team where you have a CSM. It's not a named CSM. It's just that you can access a team of CSMs. And then that team will then continue to mine opportunities, and they will continue to use that propensity to grow model that we use on the PQLs to actually decide which customers they talk to and when and about what.
Does that change the journey at all, or I should say customer experience? Like, let's say you're used to a one-to-one engagement, or maybe the opposite, you're used to a tech touch engagement, and suddenly you've moved into this different segment. Like you said, you either bought more products or changed the product space. That means a different engagement model by the sounds of it. And you went from a dedicated CSM to a pooled CSM. Does the customer feel friction there? How have you worked out where changing them from segments is easy to do? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that when they're thinking about scale and they're thinking about digital. It's like, how do we get our customers to understand this is our new ways of working?
Yeah. I think so. First of all, going up is always easier, right? Giving them more resources is it's nearly always welcomed. Now, whether they adopt that resource because they know how to use it, that's a different story. So sometimes you might introduce them and say, hey, you now have access to a group of CSMs that you can have strategic conversations about how to do more with HubSpot, how to get better adoption with your team. Customers might not pick up that and not actually take you on that offer. And you have to be more proactive than that. You have to, get a CSM to pick up the phone and introduce themselves and, come in with a few nuggets of things that they know will be valuable for the customer and say, hey, I know that you're doing A, B, and C on the product. I have a few ideas on how you can do this better. So moving up is easier, but not always the customer will pick up and enjoy the benefits of that extra resource. So we have to still really push for that. But moving down is obviously harder. When a customer is downgrading, let's say they're eliminating a product or they're going to a lower tier, that often comes with also moving segments. And at that point, I'm used to working with Anika. I'm like, we know each other and my kids' names, like we have a relationship. Now I'm going to go and I don't have somebody I can, pick up the phone, but it's always going to be somebody different. And that comes with a little bit more friction. Funny enough, that ends up being a selling point for people to stay on their tier. Sometimes they're like, oh, I can't lose my CSM.
Wow, that's a great amount of value you're delivering if someone's like, actually, I'm not going to move because of my customer success manager. That's huge.
Yeah. So that is part of the communication. It's like, okay, you're considering this move. Here's everything that you're going to lose, like from a functionality perspective, but also from a services perspective, what it is that you lose. What we like saying though at HubSpot that it's not about giving less value to a customer as they move down the segmentation strategy, is about delivering value in a different way. And I think that is one of the things that we are learning a lot about AI is that, for example, in support, we're able to deflect a huge percentage of our tickets because of the quality of our bots. And customers are not unhappy that they're working with bots. They're happy because they're getting their answers faster and their problems are being solved without having to call anybody or wait on an email or it's actually the service quality has gone up, even though the touch has lowered from a human perspective. So I think what we're trying to do, and we're still, trialing and iterating on this, but is finding ways to deliver value to customers using a different medium in a way that actually might even feel better to the customer. They are doing that. Like, for example, the recommendations inside the product of like, you're trying, here's your emails that you're sending. Here's the overall performance of your emails. Here's 3 things that you should do better. Like, should I wait for a conversation for a CSM to get that? Or is it better that I have that inside the product where I work, where I am like building my emails and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to go and click on this article and figure out how I implement that right now. So I think we are still trying and testing and figuring out what are the use cases where value is even better when it's actually delivered digitally. And hopefully, as we do that, we actually scale that throughout the entire segmentation strategy. It's not because you have a strategic CSM that you're always going to get a human to solve a problem. There are problems that are better solved using technology. So lots of learnings, lots of lessons in that space. I think everybody in the industry is learning in that space right now.
Yeah, I love that. And we've talked a lot around a number of different ways that you guys have scaled, whether it's been renewal, whether it's been QBRs or collecting value realization in the app. There are a number of different things everyone can do when it comes to scaling and really focusing on driving customer growth and retention at scale. But you've also talked about a number of different models as well. And I'm wondering if you were to look back at it all and look at it all over again, where would you put your bets, or where would you actually start when it comes to driving customer retention and growth at scale? And is there a model you followed, or did you just start segmenting? If someone was doing this for the first time, or they're trying to scale to the numbers that you've done before, where would you actually start and put your energy towards?
Yeah. So I'll start this answer by saying that the human-led segments get way better performance than the digital segments from a perspective of gross retention, churn, net retention. The numbers, when you put a human in the process, the results are better always. Every single company I've worked in, that has been true. And I think this is a testament to the value of the CSM, right? Because it's not just delivering information, it's also brainstorming, is helping hold customers accountable to the things that they said that they want to do. Communication, is buy-in. There's like loads of things that CSM does that creates value. So I start by saying the human touch segments always get better results because of the hand-holding that the CSM does. Actually, even when you think about, if we look at customers that not only have a CSM, but are also using a partner. So if you have a even more resources dedicated to you, somebody doing work hand in hand with you, somebody that does it for you sometimes, they even get better results, right? So the more resources you get, the better results you get. That's the math of today. But to go back to models, like one thing that I've learned, and if I was to start from scratch again somewhere else, the first thing that I would do is create a dynamic segmentation strategy. And what I mean by that is not only segmenting by how much somebody spends, but also segmenting by how much value they can have. So if you think about two axes, if you think about an axis that today is value, the value that they pay, I would include how much value can they generate. So the white space piece.
Yes, white space analysis. I love that.
Because if you have, let's say, if you have a really large customer who are now on your lowest paying tier with a very small team, and you treat them exactly as a customer that has as a startup with 3 employees, like one has huge white space and opportunity and the other doesn't. So I think really considering putting resources into potential is something really important. So I would start with, I would add that to the segmentation. But then on the other axis, I would include how much, like I would include health. And I say health not as a health score that everybody knows and uses, but health from a perspective of how much usage you have in the product based on your use case, and then how much value you're getting. So if you think about it, you end up with 4 quadrants. You end up with customers who have high spend and high spend potential with high usage and high value that they're getting from the product. Those are the customers that, you double invest on because they have a lot of potential. They are seeing a lot of value. They're the customers you probably want speaking on your marketing material in your big conference. So you want to really invest on those guys. And then if you look at the quadrant of the customers that have high potential and high value, but have low usage and low value that they are extracting from the product. Like that's the people that you really need to pay attention to when it comes to pouring CSM resources to help them see usage adoption and value. And then on the bottom for your low potential customers, which is where so many CSMs end up spending time, like the low health, low potential customers, like that is, I would say the lowest priority that you should have in your book of business, because you could pour a bunch of resources to make them healthy, but they're never going to fulfill a large potential. So we would use that quadrant model and actually build a system that helps CSMs understand their book of business using that quadrant, so they know where to spend their time. Like that is the first thing I would do if I came into a new business that had a large number of customers that was operating in scale or hoping to get to scale. That's what I would do.
I love that. I also love that matrix can apply even if you don't have a large book of business. I'm just thinking of how much time, like you just said, customer success managers spend on the low spend, low value, but high energy customers, meaning they're asking for so much, but they're not going to live up to the delivery value that you were hoping to get with them. That clearly, that matrix would be a very clear picture of where you should be investing your time and energy, and also what models you should be putting in place. Like you said, whether it's a high touch engagement, a semi-digital attempt with, some sort of in-app guidance, but then also maybe a digital guidance, because they're really not going to go anywhere and there's no white space analysis for them to even grow because they are going to stay in that smaller segment. I love that visual. And I actually wrote a little X down on my notepad right now because I'm thinking, oh, that's such a great model. I love that, Daphne. Thanks for sharing. But listen, we could sit here and talk about retention, growth, scale, all these different topics for hours on end, I'm sure. But I want to wrap up with our quickfire question round where I challenge each of one of my guests to answer the next 4 questions in 1 sentence or less. Are you ready for the challenge?
Yes.
Awesome. My first question for you is, if you could predict the future of customer success, what do you think CS will focus on next year?
2025, I think will continue to be a year where customer success is driving growth from a revenue perspective. So that's where I think the skill sets, the tools, the technology, that's everything is going to be geared to revenue generation.
I love that. I totally agree. And I think that revenue is really the way forward. Awesome. Next question is, which app or software do you use on your phone or your laptop every day of the week?
Notion.
Yeah. I love Notion too. Oh, I use it personally, professionally. I just everything lives in Notion. So love that. Awesome. Next question is, if you could change one thing about customer success, what would you change?
I would change the perception in the CSM's minds that we are here to make customers happy. That's not why we're here.
Ooh, controversial. I love that. What would you tell them that they would do or what they should be focused on instead of making customers happy?
I would say we're here to make customers successful, so our business is successful.
I love that. Love that. And my last question for you today is, who should be my next podcast guest?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I am currently obsessed with communities. And I don't mean communities, just community platforms. I mean actually how you create an engaged community of people that are raving fans. That's something that's occupying a lot of my mind space right now. And I have a recommendation for you. There is the leader of the RevOps co-op community. His name is Matt Vaughn. I actually just came back from the conference that they organized. I think he has built an incredible community. And I say that as well because RevOps always forgets about customer success. Customer success is the forgotten child of revenue operations. Marketing and sales get all the resources and we get the scraps. And Matt really understands that, and he understands the importance of customer success for revenue generation. So I would say I recommend Matt.
Amazing. That's awesome. I love that. Someone that's not directly in customer success, but still a big contributor to the space. I will have to hit Matt up. Thank you so much, Daphne, for your energy, your authenticity, your time here on this podcast. If our guests have more questions or want to follow up on anything on this conversation, I know you're online everywhere, but where is the best place for our guests to follow up with any questions?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Daphne Costa Lopes, Lopes with an S on LinkedIn. I also have a website, thisisgrowth.media, which is where the newsletter is at. So those are the two best places to find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daphne, for your time. I really appreciate it and I loved our conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anika.
Thank you for listening to the Customer Success Pro podcast today. I hope you learned something new to take back to your team and your company. If you enjoyed today's episode, please can you take 1 minute to give me a positive review on Apple Podcasts? It takes a lot of time and energy to create an episode, and I want to continue to create more for you. But it would be great to know that you are enjoying these episodes. Also, do not forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, as I release a new podcast every month. And if you have any topics that you would like me to discuss in the future, or you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please feel free to reach out. All my contact details are in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it, because sharing is caring. Thanks again for listening, and tune in next time for more on customer success. Cheers to your CS journey, and catch you next time.